Well, hello everyone. How are you today? Now, this is going to be a bit of a longer vid, so I'm trying to get to where I can hold the camera without my hand jittering. I can usually only do that a few minutes, but that's because of my seizures. Now, I put up a poll of on does the people want me to talk about a long vid on me or a drastia? And 3 to 1 want to talk about me. Now, in the poll, it looked like there were 12 votes for Adrastia. So I'm kind of guessing that's just exactly how many sock accounts Adrastia has. Just saying. One of them could be a real person. Could be. Not sure. But, my subscriber base from my other channel has mostly turned over on this channel. So there's a lot of basic things that you don't know about me. Now, one, I've had years of therapy, and I have complex PTSD, is what I have my disability for. And I've also been declared psychologically unique. So that means when everybody else is putting their beliefs on my motives, I'm doing something else entirely because they're putting what their motives would be, or their fantastic creations. So, I've had a traumatic life from birth, and that's where we'll start to get into it. Now, I was born a long, long time ago in a city relatively close geographically. Now, I was born with 3 mutations. Now, some people make fun of one of the mutations you can see. The other 2 you can't see. You see my nose? See that ridge up there? That is cartilage. And it's all loose. And the hole goes all the way up to there. And that's one of my mutations. Now, my second mutation on the side, one of my sides, I almost told you which one, but I thought for security, I better not. On one of my sides, I have 2 of my ribs that are completely solid bone. So, where you would normally have 2 ribs, I have a bit of armor over one of my lungs. Like I said, I almost told you which one, but I think for security, we better leave you guessing. It leaves me a 50-50. But, I've developed biological armor in a sensitive spot. Now, I'm a little more prone to pulling the intercostal muscle under it, but, it is an evolutionary advantage. Now, unfortunately, I was born with the third one, which was missing a large part of my urinary tract, which was going to be instant death. Well, near instant. As soon as my body couldn't clean itself out. Now, this was 1968. Technology was much, much different. Normally, people in my condition died. Now, it's no problem. But you see, I was a breakthrough case. I had 3 different surgeries through the first 6 months of life. After each of those surgeries, they said I would not live the night. So also in my first 6 months of life, they gave me a lot of drugs. I mean, a lot. Just imagine, you have a baby that's not going to pull through. And you have 1960s pharmaceuticals. I mean, you give me morphine in the hospital, I don't even notice it. It's just like you're putting water in my veins. And I don't have any scientific evidence on it, but my thought is my body is just from that first 6 months of life is so adapted to morphine that I don't even notice its effects other than the fact that it kills pain. Because when I had my gallbladder out, there was 3 days before they could get it out that they were giving me massive amounts of morphine, and I'm like, I don't feel any different. Now, it wasn't suffering, but I didn't feel any different. Now, and that is where my complex PTSD stems from. The first 6 months of my life was very traumatic. And I was also told they changed my blood 3 times. And I can only imagine, because back then they paid for blood in the 1960s. I can only imagine what they were putting in me. Now, my therapist and myself thinks that's one reason why I don't get addictions. You know, I can do something bad and have the same negative feelings, but I kicked drugs 3 times in the first 6 months of my life. So I can suffer through it no problem. Now, you see, I've also been diagnosed as having 6 distinct ego states. Everyone has ego states. It's not DID, and anyone that wants to start talking DID bullshit on my channel, I will laugh in your face and block you. You know, that warning's out there now for those that want to try to troll bullshit. You know, because everyone has ego states. It's ways and patterns of doing things. You know, you're not the same person in the bedroom as you are in the workplace, as you are at a family gathering. You know, those are each different parts of you. Unless you're Letitia. Now, there are few people that I do see on YouTube that do have distinct ego states, I can tell. Amberlyn Reed, Rich Life of Road Trips. Letitia's got 3 distinct ego states. But where these other lolcows have 3 distinct ego states, I have 6. And once again, a lot of it comes down all to trauma. And one of the reasons why they're distinct is because they had a lot to cope with. You know, in the first 6 months, you have the core ego state, which is in a horrible amount of pain. That created the feral ego state. I planned on holding this, but I gotta move that arm. So that created the feral ego state. You know, we're not even out of the crib. But I was messed up so bad, there was a part that, you know, the core being that, you know, is my core ego state, and the animal me, you know, there was a part that they couldn't even take that pain. So it created a new ego state. And it's interesting, we might say. It is a creature fueled off of adrenaline. And it gives me certain advantages. Now, once again, many people wish to mock me, and I don't give a fuck because they're nothing. If they say anything to it in my face, I'll throw them through a wall. Just saying. In fact, I am in that ego state right now with another one we're about to talk about, merge. Because you see, like everyone else, it's all of a whole, but you know, now and then they merge into flavors. And right now you have the rattlesnake and the magus. Now, the rattlesnake did not start off the rattlesnake. You know, there's 2 of my ego states that evolved because they can do that. Yes, they can. Now, the rattlesnake started off as the adventurer. And that was an advantage as a child. Because if there was a difficult task, it was put off onto the one that liked adventure. You know, you could get hurt doing things. You know, that helped with the bravery aspect of childhood. I wasn't afraid to do things as a child. Now, as a small child, of course, I was afraid of being injured because that was a part of the PTSD. That, and by 6, my dad would take his big ass fist and put it upside of my head many times every day. That was the abuse. Fist across head, always the same side. And in fact, my head goes slightly further this way than it is supposed to, and that is from childhood. But that is a digression on our story. So, while I am in this crib, we have now had my core ego state, a feral animal-like ego state, and this ego state that no one generally likes in this universe. But you do, you just don't know it. And once again, my first 6 months of life, I was in a crib in Cincinnati, in Children's Hospital. And many of you don't know it, but then Cincinnati Children's Hospital was one of the top hospitals in the world for children. And they're the ones that worked on me. And despite the fact that they said I wouldn't live, I pulled through, of course. Now, I didn't get into my mommy's arms until 6 months old. So, I was taken care of by nurses for the first 6 months of my life. So there was no initial bonding with mommy. Mommy's just a visitor. The nurses were the ones that took care of me. And I like nurses today. Only I know how to treat them, unlike a YouTuber that we won't talk about. Named James Robert Clark III. Yes, excuse me. So, getting out of the crib. Now, of course, I was told this, but my family told me before, 1, I learned to walk myself. I learned to talk myself. And they said they put a little potty chair next to the regular toilet. And they said by 1, I potty trained myself. So I was showing extreme amounts of intelligence. Now, in therapy, we wondered about this. So we talked about this for a long time. And this was kind of our conclusion. That first 6 months of life, especially that feral ego state, I was just sitting on there picking up information. And that's why this hyper-intelligent ego state that brings you YouTube and breakdowns exists. Is because that first 6 months of life, I was trying to make sense of everything from a crib and an incubator. And like I said, I was very, very messed up. It's like, the Rorschach paintings? Whatever you show me, I will say blood. Blood, blood, blood. Now, of course, when I was young, I lied and made up things when I talked to them, but we figured out why I see blood. Because in the dark, blood is black. And you know how babies like to grab at things? So, there was multiple times, evidently, I messed myself up as a baby. Because every time, as I said, that, I see a Rorschach painting, all I see is drops of blood. And that comes from that. Now, once again, that's where a group of my ego states come in. Now, once again, my father at 6-year-old became very abusive. And he had certain culinary habits. My mother I only saw her on the weekends. She was working the rest of the time. And my father only wanted to eat beans. Every meal, every day. And as a child, after a couple of years of that, it started making me sick. I couldn't stand it anymore. And he said, "Boy, you'll eat beans or you ain't eating nothing." And he was true to his word. So from 6 to 13, I got my own food. And he's dead and I still hate him. Just saying. So, that was a struggle into itself. Well, at 6 years old, we had a creation of an ego state. This was the only one that I consciously made. The night. My sense of right and wrong. This isn't fair. I don't like this. This is not right. And that created an ego state on itself. In actuality, that created my moral compass. That's why I don't go around killing people. Just saying. Well, unless they were to need it. But then that's the rattlesnake ego state. Now, once again, growing up a little further, not many years, when we were learning math is about the time the devil ego state came. Now, the devil ego state started out as the scavenger, because at 6 years old, I'm trying to figure out how to get a meal every day. And for 6 to 8, I had a school lunch, and then at 8 years old, they stopped school lunches. Now, as a small child at 8 years old, in many days that school lunch was all I was getting, I about had a panic attack. Just saying. But you see, during all of this time, that core ego state, the one that my therapist called the nurse, shut down. And the other 5 that had to scavenge for itself became the dominant creature. And then I went about the world getting myself to school, because I did. I got myself to school. I got up in the morning, I dressed myself, I cleaned myself, and I walked myself to school. I didn't see a person until evening. It is what it is. It was the 1970s and the 1980s. And in this case, at that time, it was the early 1970s. When I was 6 years old, Nixon was president. So, that kind of gives you a time frame. And I thought that news was to tell you where people died in war today. As a child, that's what I thought the news was for, because the Vietnam War was going on. But, these other 5 ego states had to go out in the world. And the devil was the scavenger and pretty good at it. Now, once again, I had to develop some social skills. And that's why the devil ego state actually has my social skills. The other ego states aren't really interested in interacting with people. Nope. It is what it is. Now, the core ego state is. But, my ego states have different opinions even about each other's ego states. We went through big exercises in therapy. My therapy wasn't some psycho-religious ass-pat therapy that Letitia got. Nope. My therapist was very religious. And we talked about psychological stuff and break down and tried to figure out where everything went. Tracing back my PTSD, large fires is a trigger. I had it then. And the only large fire I was ever in was 12. So that was actually how we finally got back, kept going backwards in my life. And that's how we finally found out that everything stemmed from my bad birth. Now, this is long and I'm almost out of space. So before it cuts me off in mid-sentence and the video is gone, I'm going to end it here. And this will just be volume 1, and we'll talk about it more later. And if you have reasonable questions, it's fine. Now, everyone, put your comments below and have a good day.